Fantasy basketball draft season is here. Time to start thinking about those rankings, thinking about the rookies that you'll be taking in your leagues this season. I'm Nick Whalen. He's Alex Barutha. We're going to break down which rookies we are targeting in drafts this year. Alex, we got to start at the top here with Cooper Flagg. I know we have him around 50 overall in our rankings over at RotoWire.com. You've been doing a ton of early drafts, early mocks, best balls. Where have you seen Cooper Flagg coming off the board most often?
Yeah, 50-ish is around where I'd be comfortable taking him, but it's pretty rare that he goes later than 35 in the mock drafts that I've been doing. And some, if you're on the second, third round turn, I've seen a lot of people take him with the first pick in the third round. Look, Anthony Davis obviously is the clear first option on that team. After that, it's kind of up in the air, especially before Kyrie Irving comes back. And I actually think D'Lo is going to be pretty good for them this season. But the reality is Flagg could step up, and they probably do want him to step up as a number 2 option. And then you also get the, I guess you could call it a bonus of the fact that Anthony Davis misses a lot of time.
Yeah.
And there are going to be those games where AD doesn't play, the 15 to 20 of them. And then Flagg's going to be the man. So I think he does have a lot of upside value this season.
What's the biggest concern when it comes to Cooper Flagg for fantasy? Because you and I think we tend to avoid rookies for the most part. There's just not a strong track record of many rookies finishing inside the top 50. Rookie guards especially tend to struggle to even get into the top 100. But what do you worry about with Flagg most from a stat perspective? The defensive production, the field goal percentage. What would keep you away from taking him at that early third, late third round price?
Yeah, I think of what. Obviously, Flagg is a very versatile player, can stuff the stat sheet. My concern would be he's going to end up playing some shooting guard, small forward, and that he won't get as many rebounds and that he won't get as many blocks as we hope he would, or that he could if he was playing power forward or something like that. And then sort of my concern with maybe the assists or the field goal percentage efficiency is I think they are going to have him handle the ball. But I think if you run a pick and roll with him and Anthony Davis, I think teams are going to switch that. And it's not going to necessarily be easy for him. But yeah, the rebounds and the blocks, I worry about a little as a rookie.
All right, tell me a little bit about Egor Demin out of BYU on this just bizarre, very young Brooklyn Nets roster.
Keeps getting bizarre after they traded for Kobe Buffkin. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, it seems like Demin is going to be the starting point guard on this team of their 5 first-round picks. And he had a bizarre summer league. It sounds, from what I heard, they told him to go out there and just fire away from 3. And he shot a ton of threes and averaged 1 assist a game, which is not his play style. He's a guy that I think if you play him 30 minutes a game, in theory, I think we have him projected for somewhere between 4 and 6 assists. Something like that. And I think that is he's more of a setup man, a floor general, that kind of a guy. But, assists are not easy to come by at the end of drafts. And if Demin is going to play, let's say, high 20s, low 30 minutes a game, even if he doesn't score that efficiently, but he gives you 6-7 assists a game, I think that's someone to consider in fantasy.
So I have Kon Knueppel on my list for the Charlotte Hornets. He's just inside our top 150 overall. I think he's the type of guy that's going to earn minutes right away. Obviously, there's significant investment as far as where they took him, but the Hornets need dependable three-point shooters. That's exactly what Kon Knueppel brings. We have him projected for about 2 threes per game. I fear we might be a little low on that, to be honest. I was looking at guys all right, who hit 2 threes per game last year? It's like Julian Champagnie hit more than 2 threes per game. I'd like to think Kon Knueppel could get to that level, but we will see. We saw in Summer League that he's more than just a 3-point shooter, though. That's part of the appeal here, right? Really heady player, a guy who kind of does everything. That he's willing to do the dirty work. This is not just a Kyle Korver sit in the corner and we're going to feed you looks type of situation. So I'm pretty high on Kon Knueppel. Somebody I'm willing to take a stab on later in some drafts. Let's have the Ace Bailey conversation, Alex, because we could talk about this bizarre roster in Brooklyn, but things not looking great right now in Utah either. The lowest opening win total, by the way, for the Jazz that we have seen in about a decade. You got to go all the way back to the process Sixers.
Yikes. And this team probably has more talent than the process Sixers. The Jazz, do the Jazz have a definitive number 2 option? I don't think so.
Well, it might be him. It might be Bailey.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. After Markkanen, and I kind of like Keontae George this year, but they don't have a clear number 2 option. And one thing that I do think plays in Bailey's favor, he's going to take a ton of tough shots. It's not going to be easy for him. I think the field goal percentage might not be great. I will say he is an underrated rebounder and guy who racks
Yeah.
up like defensive deflections as well. So that's going to be interesting. We saw some of that summer league. The Jazz, have clearly been able to highlight or raise Markkanen's level of game as someone who's kind of like a catch and shoot. We run him off his screens. He catch shoots, pump fakes. And I think Bailey can be that type of guy where they actually run a lot of Markkanen type actions for Bailey to get those shots. And so, look, I think he's, if nothing else, I think he'll be valuable for the volume that he's going to accumulate in Utah.
Yeah, it's not like an overly fantasy-friendly stat profile, at least what we know about him now. 38 total assists in exactly 1,000 minutes last year at Rutgers. So I wouldn't expect much in that regard. The defensive numbers could go either way. I don't think he's billed as a good defender, but like you said, the deflections could end up being there. I think the minutes are going to be there. And look, we could talk about whether or not he's the number 2 option. There might be some nights, especially later in the season, where he's the number 1 option. Like, how many games do we expect Lauri Markkanen to reasonably play at this point? It feels like you could pencil him in for at least 20 missed games, and I don't know if that changes this year. I don't think Utah is going to be competitive, so really, really tough player to evaluate, but certainly some upside with Ace Bailey. Before we get to the rest of our list, just a reminder, use the code YouTube15. Put that in at RotoWire.com, 15% off any of our subscription plans over at RotoWire. Get access to all of our fantasy basketball content, all of our football content, everything on the site. Just put in that code YouTube15. Let's talk a little Dylan Harper, Alex. A much different situation from the players that we've talked about so far. He's on a pretty stacked San Antonio Spurs roster, especially in the backcourt. I think as of now, you kind of have to expect him to open the season coming off the bench. He's dealt with some injuries this offseason. We'll see how it shakes out, though. But you have De'Aaron Fox. You have the reigning Rookie of the Year in Stephon Castle. You have Devin Vassell, a really good player on the wing. So where do you see Dylan Harper fitting in?
It sounds like he is going to come off the bench. And I think it's not too much of a reach to assume that he can get 6-man minutes, anywhere between 22 to 28 a night, given the situation. And I think he'll play really well. I mean, the team is not particularly deep with playmakers. Obviously you mentioned Fox, Castle, Wembanyama, Vassell are probably the top 4. But then after that, it's pretty open. And I think Harper, to some extent, will run the bench unit. So, and we know he's very talented. It might be slow going at first, and maybe he doesn't have this big, pop, rookie season. But I think he's going to hook up quality numbers in the minutes that he gets.
What do we do with Tre Johnson in Washington? Really tough situation to evaluate. The Wizards are not going to be a very good team, and yet you see 2 established veterans on that roster right now, and CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton. I don't know that I trust either of those guys to be on the roster after the trade deadline. We've seen this before with some of these bad teams where you have a veteran contract, and even late last season, with Chris Middleton, it's like he's in, he's out, he's not playing a full complement of minutes. So, kind of a lot going on with Washington. I like Tre Johnson a lot as a player, volume scorer, volume shooter, not afraid to fire away. He'll give you some rebounds, he'll give you some assists. We'll see about the steals production. Wasn't great at the college level. I do think field goal percentage is going to be a massive issue, but he is an excellent free throw shooter. He was north of 85% as a freshman at Texas. So, I think that portends well as far as how that shot develops. Are you investing in Tre Johnson late in drafts?
I haven't gotten him yet in any mocks I've done, but I will say I think if you're in a deeper league, like if you're playing a 14 or 16, I think it's probably worth drafting, or at least, to some extent, because at least if you can hang on to him towards the end of the year, I think that could pay off. And you mentioned the McCollum and Middleton, and Koulibaly's going to be out for a little while, so maybe that rotation opens up. But they're also still holding on to Corey Kispert.
Yep.
And so if they can find a way to move off of Kispert, whether that's before the season or during the season, that kind of just opens up 20 minutes a game easy and some usage. And Johnson is not necessarily someone who needs the ball. So I think there's going to be shots there for him because this team doesn't have, a lot of their young players are not dominant scorers.
All right, tell me about VJ Edgecombe, where he fits in with the Sixers.
Yeah, I mean, the Sixers, it's a complicated mix, and that's the worry when drafting Edgecombe is like, okay, well, Maxi's obviously the number 1. McCain is there who's going to fire off his shots. And, you're bringing in Quentin Grimes again, who, popped at the end of last season. the Paul George and Joel Embiid conversation has to be had to some extent. I just trust Maxey the most, whether or not he's actually the number one option. But I do think Edgecombe's energy and the fact that he can probably play, I don't want to say he can necessarily play 1 through 3, but like I think he's going to just play himself onto the court all the time, because this team, you know, as fast as Maxey is, the rest of the team can be like a little sleepy between Paul George and Embiid. So it's almost more of like a like IQ energy effort bet. Maybe the stats don't necessarily come along with it right away, but I do really like him this year.
The last guy on my list that I think we need to mention is Cedric Coward for the Memphis Grizzlies. I am at least Cedric Coward curious this season. Hard to know what his role is going to be, but you know, Memphis went way out of their way to grab him in the draft, traded up to number 11 to get Cedric Coward, and yeah, in theory, there's opportunity on the wing here with Desmond Bane now in Orlando. It's like you bring back KCP as part of that deal. He'll be in the starting lineup. You got Jalen Wells. You got Vince Williams. That's about it. I mean, Memphis has also been just incredibly injured these last couple of years. It feels like everybody on that roster is always banged up. You know, Coward himself obviously had injury issues his last year in college, didn't play that many games, but I think he's somebody that we could look back at as one of the steals of the draft. I mean, it's hard to say, yeah, you should take him at, you know, pick 140 overall, because who knows what his role is going to be early on. But I would not be surprised if he's one of those guys that a few weeks into the season, we look back on and say, man, that guy, you know, he's hitting the ground running.
Yeah, I think that wing rotation is entirely up for grabs. KCP didn't play that well for Orlando last year.
Yeah, he was terrible.
I like Jalen Wells. I don't know how much offensive upside he has. I think in theory, Cedric Coward has the most offensive talent if like fully actualized. Maybe not this season, but long term. So yeah, someone who could have the opportunity to try to establish himself as a third offensive option, even though that would be a little bit surprising. I think touches will be there.
Are you interested at all in Jeremiah Fears for the Pels?
I don't. Probably not. I mean, Queen and Fears are totally like fair questions, because they're usage guys, right?
Yeah.
How much is Queen going to play center? Is Fears going to be able to play point guard while Poole plays shooting guard? And then what happens when DeJounte Murray comes back? Are they still doing the Jose Alvarado thing? Are they actually going to try to be good? There's a lot of questions around that, but I wouldn't blame anybody for taking like a last round flyer. I think preseason will help sort some of that out.
All right, anybody who went later in round one, who you have kind of earmarked as maybe a late round guy or somebody you'll be targeting on the waiver wire early in the season?
Well, I can't. What was his draft position? Ryan Kalkbrenner? I can't remember.
Yeah, he was a second rounder.
Okay, yeah, someone I'm paying attention to, because Charlotte's center rotation, who knows? Like on it, like they have Moussa Diabate, they brought in Mason Plumlee. It's really easy to forget that Grant Williams exists and plays for this team and could play small ball center. But Kalkbrenner, look, in Summer League, he looks slow. He is a slow player. He's just a plodding big, but a fantastic defender. So if he's able to just sort of squeeze himself into 20 minutes a game, if he averaged 2 blocks, would not surprise me. So someone I'm certainly interested in.
All right, Alex, well, we'll end on this. As we record this on Friday, September 19th, we did just get news that Tyler Hero is going to undergo surgery on his foot and ankle. He'll miss at least the start of the season. Not sure how much time he could be out to begin the year. How much interest do you have in Jakucionis potentially filling in early on?
It's tough because if he fell in the draft, so that has to worry you. Summer League performance was up and down. I think my concern is that they have a lot of other playmakers, like the Davion Mitchell's going to handle the ball, Powell, Wiggins is going to handle Adebayo, and then they still, I would imagine to an extent, Nikola Jovic and Jaime Jaquez are still the priority over Jakucionis, but we'll see. I think they drafted him because they're interested in that, like, can he go out there and do stuff and maybe be a playmaker on the bench unit.
All right, that'll do it for our rookies breakdown for the 2025-26 fantasy basketball season. Again, put in that code YouTube15 at RotoWire.com. It'll get you 15% off everything we offer on the site. Again, that code YouTube15.